gonna have to do this. Oh, hey everybody. My auto increment was a little off there. We're talking about shuttles going off and on. oh, hey, David, everyone in the channel, welcome to our Lunch and Learn. David, how the heck are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I am so excited to have you. This is a topic that I really want to get into. I'm really looking forward to this. I see we've got some great people in the chat already. We've got Donald. It's good to see you, Donald. If you're in the chat, let us know where you're from. Let us know, as always, this is live, right? We're without a net. So if you guys have questions for David about AtScale or how you could use AtScale, where you'd use AtScale, or any of the topics we have coming up, post those into the chat down below. Please preface it with a Q colon so it stands out. I think that's the standard thing we're doing. But I do want to hear where everyone is from, so let us know what state or city you're from or country you're in. It would be great to connect and understand what we got going on. And Donald is asking for Les Grossman if he's going to be appearing today. I unfortunately Les is not in studio today. I don't know if you've seen Tropic Thunder. David, do you remember that movie? Ben Stiller.
Yes.
Tom Cruise. There's this AI. Les Grossman from that movie is actually a regular on my show, and he sometimes pops in for questions, but he's not here today, so you don't have to worry about that.
All right, cool.
So, hey, Dave, let's. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us where you're from, where you're at. Introduce yourself.
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. I'm Dave Mariani. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a company called AtScale. Along with my other co-founders, we started AtScale almost 10 years ago now. So we've been at it for a while.
Oh, hang on.
And always in data.
Hold on. Rewind. We had some automation go off here. Let's try that again. David, you've been at AtScale CTO for 10 years. Keep going from there. Sorry about that.
Actually, I've been at AtScale for 10 years, but I actually started out as CEO of AtScale, and then about three years ago, brought in somebody to run the business, Chris Lynch, and then I became CTO. So was reluctant CEO for the first 5 years of sort of building out the product and getting market fit. And then once it came to scale, I decided that, I'm a technical guy. I love to build products and love to build tech, and not so excited about running sales or running marketing or any of the other sort of activities out there. I'm a tech guy. I'm a data guy. But I graduated from UCLA, so I'm a Bruin as an economics major. So nothing to do with any sort of technology background, other than the fact that I love to program BASIC on my Apple II Plus, which got me my first job, which was it's crazy.
So talk us through, how did you go from marketing to technology? What was that journey like?
Well, so I was a economics major, right, at UCLA. So and nobody told me at the time, because I'm dating myself here. This is in the late '80s.
Yeah.
Investment banking was where all the smart kids were going and making big money. And I didn't know what I wanted to do because whatever, I was 18, right? So I just knew that my favorite hobby was in writing code, and nobody told me, because I grew up from Stockton, California, which is a very small farming town. Nobody told me there was a career in tech, because there really wasn't much of a career in tech, right, Chris, back then. I went and interviewed around, and this crazy company that was a consulting firm at the time, saw that I said as one of my hobbies that I wrote code on an Apple II Plus, and they said you're hired, and that was kind of the end of that.
Oh, that is so funny. At one point in time, that was almost all it took, right? Like just being willing to do anything with the computer. Like, all right, you're in. Right? Oh, that's fantastic. So,
Yeah, at the time, Chris, it's like, Oracle. I think Oracle was brand new. It was a SQL based by Gupta was the sort of the first relational database that was sort of getting some popularity. And then Oracle, I think, was Oracle 4 or Oracle 5. So really early on in the relational database world. But definitely was what that piqued my interest was being able to store data and do analytics on data. For analytics back then meant banded reports with a banded report writer was something that I just thought was fascinating.
Well, and I get it, right? Be able to take that data and do something with it and bring that together. I think me and you have the same opinions of this. But I really like, because we've seen this in the news recently, people who are big into tech, moving into that C-suite, that CEO position, and then like holding on probably longer than they should have because they weren't being true to themselves. What was that like for you to make that decision to say, you know what, I should have someone else doing all of these other tasks, and it's okay for me to not be in that, like that founder, that CEO position of the company you jointly founded?
Yeah, it was actually kind of, it was a big decision, obviously, and one that I went back and forth on. And a lot of people's advice were, especially in the tech industry, is why would you want to give up the reins? Why would you want to do that? And for me, I was, when I started the company, it was, a friend of mine who worked for Kleiner Perkins. I said, hey, I can't start this because I don't have a CEO in mind. And he's like, well, why can't you be the CEO? And it's like, well, because I don't want to be the CEO. I've never been a CEO. I've always been a VP of engineering or a CTO. Always running product. He said, look, if you can do this, I know you can do this. So that sort of started me out. And it made sense, Chris, in the early days because if you think about it, sales and marketing wasn't really important because we had to build the product first. Sure. We had to get those initial customers work it out and incorporate that feedback back into their product. So it was very much a product oriented first 5 years of the company. I really didn't. It's like I just knew you got to love what you do, and if you love what you do, you're going to do it all the time. Right. And after many sleepless nights, as raising money as the guy everybody in the company relied on, I was really looking forward to bringing on somebody who knew sales and marketing and who could do it and do it right the first time, versus me learning on the job. I just don't believe you should learn on the job. At least not when you have a lot of people depending on you and a lot of customers depending on your success.
Yeah, and I think that that makes a lot of sense, and that's a great pivot point to say, I should hand these reins to someone else. That kudos for you. I think honestly, I've purposely done similar moves in my life where, I am on the tech side. I like the tech side. I don't necessarily need to be the marketing guy or the HR guy, that type of thing. So that I completely get where you're coming from there. All right. Well, I want to get more into AtScale, but before we do that, this is a lunch and learn. So thank you all for tuning in on your lunch hour and, listening to us ramble on about technology. Really appreciate it. So as tradition, before we dive into this, we're going to, grab our beverage of choice, and we are going to take a communal sip and then we're going to dive into the technology. All right, so let's have a drink. All right.
Nice.
All right. So let's get into it. David, you created this company called AtScale. I have had 3 people explain to me how amazing AtScale is, and it does. One person described an apple, the other person described a car, and the other person described the concept of happiness. And while all of those are uniquely, individually awesome, I don't necessarily know how apple, car, happiness all come together, or what really AtScale is. So, CTO, owner of AtScale. What is AtScale? How does it work? Explain this to me.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to not make this an AtScale commercial as much as I can, Chris, right? Because it really is the concept of the semantic layer. And the concept of the semantic layer has been around since analytics was born, right? I mean, back in the 90s, business objects has the business objects universe. MicroStrategy has their equivalent. So did Cognos. So the semantic layer has been around for a long time, and as a semantic layer, it's a semantic layer is what makes technical data in the forms of tables and columns much more approachable to a wider audience, because it puts a business-friendly face on that data. And typically that business-friendly face has been a dimensional face. So it's been measures, dimensions, and hierarchies, common business terms like revenue and organization and product. So things that a business user can understand. And so that really sort of, at least in the 90s and the early 2000s, really sort of got a lot of people involved in working with data. Well, then what happened, Chris, right, is that because the semantic layer was tightly coupled to those tools, you start to see that the separation. What Tableau is saying, hey, you know what? Let's let the business basically define their own semantic layer in the context of a visualization. And OLAP as a technology, the data grew too fast. OLAP as a technology could not scale. So we kind of threw out the semantic layer and tossed the baby out with the bathwater. And so we went right back to forcing business users, to basically understand the technical terms of data warehouses. How to actually, what's a table, how to create joins, how to create that relationships, and do all that before they could actually ask the question that they actually came with. And so our big innovation was when I was at Yahoo. I had this problem where, I was running analytics for Yahoo, lots of different types of users from our different audience teams, each running their own web properties like Yahoo Finance and Homepage and Sports. I had my advertising teams who were generating revenue through search and display advertising. They all needed access to data, and I ended up basically doing all that work for them by reformatting data over and over again for all these different tools: ClickView, Tableau, MicroStrategy, Excel, you name it, custom applications. And I just thought that was crazy. And what I wanted was, where was the semantic layer? Why can't I define one semantic layer, put it on top of my data, use that as the interface to that data for anybody who wants to ask a question? And really, Chris, this was the crux. Let them use the tool that's best for the job. So I'm not gonna try to force the MicroStrategy users to use Tableau, and I'm not gonna be able to force Tableau users to MicroStrategy, and this, let them use the tool that they're used to using. But when they connect those tools, they should be seeing the same representation of data. They should have the same governance, and they should have the same great performance, without having to reinvent the wheel every single time they want to build a visualization or ask a question.
Yeah, I
So what we call it is a universal semantic layer, Chris,
okay.
because it stands alone from the data warehouse as well as from the consumption tools.
Well, I really like that because I think you're right. I like the analogy use of the tools that you're going to use, the tools in your tool belt, right? And when it comes to that reporting or that actual consumption layer, you're right. Many organizations will have they'll have Power BI, they'll have Tableau, they'll have ClickView, they'll have a whole bunch of tools that the different practitioners within their organization use. And if you know, without that semantic layer, everyone's doing their own thing, and like governance goes right out the door. It becomes a real challenge. So it makes sense to me that you would have one universal semantic layer that would sit over all of that. Can you talk to me? And I think like some of the biggest challenges I've had when it comes to semantic layers is like the sources that you can work and operate on from. How does AtScale or how does this solution work when let's say I'm in a large enterprise and I've got a whole bunch of data in Azure, I've got a whole bunch of data in AWS or GCP or on-prem or wherever. How does AtScale work in those types of situations?
So, Chris, do you mind if I show you a picture?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let me just go ahead and share here.
Awesome.
And this is really how it works, right? So you have the semantic layer that's sitting in between, and I can talk a little bit about the different the different services here. But you
Mm-hmm.
have your tools on the right, and then you have your data platforms on the left.
Okay.
And really, it's the job of the semantic layer to basically abstract away where the data sits. So whether it
Mm.
be in Snowflake, whether it be in the data lake, in which case access through Databricks, or whether it be in GCP, with Google BigQuery. The fact is that it's really the semantic layer's job to basically turn logical queries that are being generated by the tools that the users and the personas that the people asking the questions, they're going to be working with a single source of governed metrics. We call that the metric store. It's going to be empowered by a data model. So you have a data steward or data stewards either in the business or in a center of excellence. Different models and different companies are defining these models. And then the semantic layer's responsibility is to turn those logical queries into physical queries and go get that data from the data warehouse. So this is pure virtualization, Chris. So we're not talking about building cubes. We're not talking about moving data into some other data store. This is a pure virtual environment. And the way that the semantic layer, at least AtScale semantic layer, delivers the kind of live performance that you get out of a Power BI Premium, or you
Mm-hmm.
get out of Tableau data extracts. Those are using internal database tools, in-memory tools, to be able to basically be able to supply that interactive sort of interactive experience. So we do that in our semantic layer by creating aggregate tables or aggregates in the data platforms that you see on the left, and then we rewrite our queries to use those. So we give our customers the best of both worlds of live access to any size data, so you don't have to sort of force it to fit in memory, but the same interactive performance you would get is as if you were to import data into Power BI Premium or create extracts in your BI tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Some questions there because you're right. Like if I have a Power BI P1, that means I'm capped at 25 gigs of memory that has to be broken out between highly compressed data that's in memory, user interactions, and any refreshes I have going on. you're saying that with AtScale, I don't necessarily have to be concerned with that memory consumption or going from a P1 to a P2 to a P3 to a P4. I can just use my premium for my access, and AtScale manages my compute. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So if I sort of drill down a little bit deeper here, um, we spent so much time, Chris, trying to get away from silos, right?
Right.
And yet, what we're doing in this new generation is creating silos again, and then it just seems it really makes me mad, honestly, because all these years we've been sort of trying to consolidate data in these new cloud data platforms. Whether you go with a lakehouse architecture or a data warehouse architecture, what have you, you shouldn't have to then take all this beautiful granular data and then make it small again for an analysis. So you can see that AtScale is just a thin layer that exposes different protocols that are compatible with the tools. You can see that Power BI speaks to AtScale's semantic layer with DAX. You can see Excel speaks MDX. You can see that Looker and Tableau are going to speak SQL through JDBC. You're going to see that you have data AI tools like Jupyter Notebook, for example, could be speaking Python. And then ultimately, we're going to orchestrate and make sure that we're going to run queries on those data on the data platform and let those data platforms, the way they scale, which is cloud scale, let them do the work. Right. So we're not going to scale analytics in the silos, Chris, right? We're gonna let the data platform scale, because that's why we went to the cloud, is to get cloud scale and let them manage the work. So that's really it's a very different approach than I think where things are going with a lot of these other alternatives, where again we're creating silos again to make data work for analytics.
No, and I like this. And let me see if I can repeat back to you what you said and extend upon it. So as I look at this, I see that means I can use any tool that uses either Python, SQL, MDX, or DAX to connect to AtScale. And so I can use that one source of truth broadly across my analytics stack. So when I don't know, everyone's in the data game these days. When Mountain Dew Kickstart comes out with their own reporting tool, Kicker, when Kicker is rolled out, and if it uses any of these protocols, we're going to be able to connect to AtScale and be able to create my own Kicker reports. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. So you pointed out the abstraction, the benefits of the abstraction on the consumption side, but Chris, there's also the benefits of abstraction on the data side, right? So let's say that I like Snowflake today, but tomorrow there's I don't know, make up another name. There's some new whiz bang way of storing data. I can because I have an abstraction layer here, I can go and move that data behind the scenes, and the people who are consuming it will never know the difference, Chris.
Well, that's a big deal. And because then you can swap things out. So you could be on an old Oracle or SQL a database that's on-prem, but then you can move it out into Synapse, or you can move it to Snowflake, or you can move it to whatever it is on the cloud. And with AtScale in the middle, you don't necessarily know that there's an issue. Is that right?
Yeah. So let me give you an example of a real customer story. So a very large home improvement retailer nationwide decided to move from analysis services, which was very constraining for them, to Hadoop. So they wanted to migrate to Hadoop on-prem. So they bought AtScale, built, basically migrated all of those OLAP cubes from SSAS to AtScale, running on Hadoop. Well, we know the story of Hadoop. Hadoop on-prem is really difficult to manage.
Yeah.
And,
Yep.
and so, they said, you know what, we want to move to the cloud. We're going to move to Google BigQuery, and we're going to go on GCP. So, that migration to go from Hadoop on-prem to GCP in the cloud, because they already had all of their analytics behind the semantic layer, they were able to make that switch, Chris, in a weekend. So literally, people on Friday were running queries against Hadoop. Teams on Monday were now running queries on BigQuery without any change in behavior or any modification of any kinds of analytics, of visualizations, or dashboards that they had built.
Wow. So for all of your front end consumers, it was seamless to them. What about your report writers? I spend a lot of time in Power BI, and if I've used a lot of enterprise models. I know that enterprise model. I know it's got a few hundred tables in there. I've got thousands of measures. What happens to me in that situation? How do you handle that?
So can I show you? You want me to show you how it works?
Oh my gosh, yeah, if you can.
All right, let's just get into it. So let's start with it all starts with a model. So what you're seeing here on the screen, Chris, this is a model called Internet Sales, and it's a dimensional model. You can see I have folders for my metrics, and I have dimensions with hierarchies. I have a couple role-playing dimensions with order dates as well as shipping dates, and this is the model that a data steward will create. And what you see over here on the preview, this is what the BI the tool user is going to see. This is the semantic layer.
Sure.
So let me do. This is like a cooking show. So this is the finished product. Let's go back, Chris, and let's create a new group, and it's going to be Chris's. It's going to be Wagner's web store. How about that? That's a cool name. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to come to and open up my project here. And now that I've created that as a new model, it's blank, and I'm starting with a blank canvas. Well, here's what I'm actually gonna go, and today I'm gonna be using BigQuery. You can see I have a bunch of different platforms that are in my data sources panel, right? Which means I can access and build models from any of these. All I need to do is connect AtScale to my data warehouse or data platform, and in this case, I'm looking at BigQuery here, and here's all my projects and et cetera in BigQuery. So let's go and let's look at, I got a demo project here, and we're going to be looking at a transaction sales log. So I'm going to pull it onto my canvas. So that's the first part of what I'm doing here. So let's just go and take a look at what that looks like under the surface by doing a preview. So Chris, what you see here is here's a preview, and I can start to data wrangle right now. I can do conversions. I can do new calculations, like I'll create a sales tax by writing a formula. I'm writing that formula just in Google BigQuery SQL, so I don't need to learn a new language here. And just like that, I have a new virtual column now called sales tax, which you see over here on the right.
Okay.
I can clean up columns, for example. I clean up these nulls by doing a replace of my nulls with some other value. Lots of different things I can do here to clean that up and do all that virtually without any ETL code. So I'm not going to write any ETL code. So let's go and let's now look what I just did there. So here's my, this now becomes a reshareable object. So sales tax can now be used in a number of different models. And the way that we create a model, Chris, is that we just drag that calculation called sales tax. I just drag it into my measure panel here, and I'll put it into a folder. And now I have my very first metric that will be exposed to my user community. I
Okay.
could do the same thing with orders. I want to know how many orders I'm selling. This is all just a transaction log now. So I didn't. This is not a star schema. This is not a fact table that I created. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just building this model straight off of the transactional data, and I'm going to do it once, right? So I have 3 measures, but watch what happens with my dimensions. I'm going to go to my library, and we have a library of conform dimensions. I got a customer dimension. I got a product dimension. I want to, of course, look at everything by days.
Find it already.
And so now it's like, now watch what I do. All I need to do is create a relationship. We call it a relationship to these different dimensions. So watch this. Customer key. I'll create that relationship from the sales log table to my customer hierarchy. Now watch what happened over here in the preview. Now, why did I get a folder called customer attributes that has a bunch of different hierarchies in it, as well as all these different attributes? Well, I got that, Chris, because just by creating that relationship, if I double click on customer dimension, the customer dimension is itself another model and another canvas. You see that?
Yeah.
And it has embedded in it a geography dimension. So that geography dimension has in it 4 different Google BigQuery tables to create my 2 rollups. And this orange thing is what we call a security dimension that allows us to filter users by region. So they can only see the data for their region. And by doing that, I get all of that governance and all of that just by creating that relationship. So now everybody's speaking the same language when it comes to how you're talking about customers. Same thing with product. Watch what happens with product. Same thing, there's my products, right? And I get a product hierarchy for free. Everybody's going to be rolling up product to category and to line and doing it the same way. What about time? This is cool. We have what we call role play, right? So I got orders and I got ship dates, 2 different dates. So watch what I could do. I can say, give me a prefix of order for order date, and then give me a prefix of ship for ship date. And then if I look at my preview over here, what I see is, you can see that I have my order date hierarchy. It inherited the structure, but of course now this is tied to order dates. Same thing with ship dates. Super easy to do. I have my model now, and all I need to do now to make this model available to the world is what we call publish it. So by publishing a model, that was just an XML document we just built. I'm now making it available for query. And just like that, let's go and look at my connection details. Here's all the different endpoints to connect to this model. You can see our MDX and DAX endpoint. Here's my Wagner's web store. I can look at it with Looker through LookML, or I'll start with Tableau. So let's start with Tableau, and I'm going to show you a SQL interface. So how we actually generate a SQL, logical SQL against the semantic layer, and what the experience is for the user. So I'm going to log in as Joe because I want to show you how we can use that security dimension. Because Joe gets access only to Europe, and David, that's me, gets access to North America. So there's my Wagner's web store, and look at all my metadata, right? But it's not, so we're not cheating here. Let me go to the data source tab. It's connected live, Chris, right? So we're not doing an extract, we're connecting live, and we're connecting to just one data source, one table. But all that metadata that you see over here is all here, and it's all here and ready to go. There's my order quantity in my sales metrics folder. Remember, there's that product hierarchy. There's my products. I'll just go right to the leaf level. Now I'm running live queries against BigQuery without having to do any of that modeling, Chris, right? Wow. So as a consumer now, somebody else did the modeling for me. So I switched roles, right? When I was in AtScale Design Center, I was creating that semantic layer. But now as a consumer, so you asked about, well, how does it change? Well, it doesn't change at all for the consumer, because just like that example I gave you, those queries were all where those queries were running has been abstracted away. So that for that customer where that query would have generated a query through AtScale against Hadoop, well, now instead it was generating a query to BigQuery. And by the way, the customer is still dealing with a semantic layer, right? They're still dealing with this logical layer, not a physical layer, but a logical layer. And they still have all their drill downs and all their and AtScale, by the way, is getting faster and learning through these queries. So I'll show you how we're doing the magic there in just one moment.
So
what about yes?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, let's say I love that you created like a new measure. That you created sales tax. What if I wanted to now say, hey, I'm missing average price of a product, and I wanted to take my sales, divide by order quantity. Where would I do that? Could I do that in the semantic layer, or could I also do that in the model or the report layer?
You can do either one.
Okay.
So you can go ahead and create we're not going to, what we don't do is like, here's the difficulty of a universal semantic layer.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you degrade the consumer experience with their BI tool, meaning you're not going to be able to use all the features in their BI tool, the semantic layer goes out the window. So I can create client-side expressions here any way I want, whether so I can go ahead and create a new calculated field, and it will work, and it will work by the semantic layer. Or, Chris, I could go back to my main canvas here, and I can go ahead and add a new metric and publish it, and it will automatically show up here in the interface. All I need to do is just hit refresh, and it will actually show up as a new metric and measure. Let's come back to that because I'll show you how that works instantly. Okay, but let's keep looking at experience. Yep. Let's go and look at the Excel experience. Here I am in Excel, and you know what? I'm going to go and get some data. This is Excel out of the box. No, there's no add-ins. I'm going to use the analysis services connection, but with the AtScale semantic layer endpoint. So there's my endpoint. And so we look just like at this point, and here's all my different projects that are showing up in AtScale. And then there you are, Chris. There's your web store. Now you're appearing as if you were a analysis services cube. And then here's my same semantic layer, right? Same governance. And here's my there's my geography. Let's go ahead and look at it by geography, and let's go ahead and drill down. So I can see North America because I'm logged in as David, and I can interact with that data not by doing a data dump, but by merely using a pivot table. And if I don't want to use a pivot table because that's too constraining for me, I can convert those, Chris, to formulas. See, now they're becoming cube members. Yep. This is just Excel, right? By the way,
right.
And so now these cells look California. Hey, I want to put that over there, and I want to put Oregon over here, and Wyoming is going to come over here, and I'm going to surround this with different visualizations and different calculations. And you know what? When it comes time where I want to get fresh data, I just say refresh, and magically those cells will update wherever they are without me doing any kind of cutting and pasting.
Oh, that's an excellent point. I forget about convert to cube functions. That's awesome. Now, I think there's something else in here I just saw. Does Joe only have access to the aggregate Canada information? Is that why when in the pivot table you could still see Canada in US dollars, but when it came to drilling in only in the US could you go in? Is that how you have that set, or am I just reading too much into it?
Now let's go and let's check it out. Let's go and check out what happened behind the scenes here.
Okay.
So let's go to our this is our query log, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. So here's all the queries that we have with Wagner's web store. So we've generated a lot of queries so far. Look at all those. So this is when life began.
Mm-hmm.
Life began right here, and you can see I logged in as Joe in Tableau, and you can see that you see this optimization column here. So the first time we did a query, this was a SQL query that came from Tableau. And you can see it's a logical query because there is no table in BigQuery called Wagner's Web Store. Just like there's no schema in BigQuery called Sales Insights BigQuery.
Okay.
But what we did is we generated a query. We applied the filter. This is where you see the filter. And there's the where clause for Joe, right? Because I was logged in as Joe. What you'll also notice, Chris, is that we are accessing the demo sales log table here in the from clause. Okay, so remember that.
Sure.
Now watch what happened. By the now as we sort of go up by the fifth query or so, still Joe. You see how it says ags now?
Yeah.
So by the fifth query, AtScale built an aggregate table. So you can see there's no longer sales logs here. Instead, we have an aggregate table that we accessed, which was 4,949 rows. And so AtScale substituted that aggregate table, which improved query performance to under a second in terms of that SQL query.
Wow.
So now you're talking about, go ahead.
Oh, I just a thought that just came in because I work with a lot of financial organizations. Security, auditing, and tracking is very important to them. Is this how and where you'd be able to run and review like who's accessing what information and what results they're getting from it? Right. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, so you could see, watch when I logged into Excel, that was in my Windows environment. And I was logged in with Active Directory as David, as myself. So I faked the Job, but there's a David. So this is the answer to your question, right? So now I'm David. You can see David is using ags right off the bat, right off the bat, right? And this time, remember, I entered as David through Excel. That's an MDX query as inbound. And then there's the outbound as a BigQuery, and we're using an aggregate. Of course, this time, we're only looking at the data based on what David has access to, and I only have access to Canada and the United States. And Joe, on the other hand, if you look at Joe has access to only data outside of the United States and Canada, and so that's how that got applied essentially.
That's interesting.
Okay. So now watch. So those queries we added. You see how it also says cache?
Yeah. So
we also can cache aggregates in memory. So look how fast that query was. That was just under 6 milliseconds to run that refresh on that MDX query. So that's super fast. That's how Excel and that experience is really good without doing import mode.
Wow.
So hold on. So don't go anywhere yet. Let's go to Power BI because this is you're the guru. You're living in this, right?
Yes,
so
I'm gonna my time. Okay.
All right. I'm connecting live, Chris. Right? And I'm connecting live using the analysis services connector here. So I'm not going to do an import mode. That would be cheating. And that's no fun. And it's no fun because I have to restrict what data I get access to. But here's my projects, all my projects. There's Wagner's web store. And I'm going to go ahead and connect live to it. So you asked a question early on, like, well, what happens again? It's like to the users on all those tables. And if I move data from, and my example was I moved it from Hadoop to BigQuery. Why are these people not impacted by that? Well, because they're dealing with the logical layer, right? And so they don't even have access to the raw data. Right now, they're just doing they're running queries against the logical layer, And that model, if I just go to the model tab here and zoom out,
Oh, you
the
can
model
still
is
see
already
the
inherited.
model. Okay.
It's all inherited, right?
Sure.
Because I'm using DAX, which means I could do new measures and do anything I want here that I can do in as if I was Power BI. I can go ahead and create my own client side expressions and do whatever I need to do here in the actual workbook. So we're not gonna restrict people from doing what they want to do in their BI tool. So so let's go back and let's look at what we just did there. Let's go ahead and do a refresh on this page. Here we go. Now you got DAX right there. DAX inbound, and of course, BigQuery SQL out, again, using aggregates. In this case, it used an 18,000 row aggregate, and we were able to deliver that live experience seamlessly. So how do we add? So how do we add?
One second before you go too far. Donald Parrish from the chat has a good question. The DAX is being translated back into SQL that's then being executed. Is that correct?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's exactly what's happening.
Okay.
Yep. Right. And AtScale is doing that translation. So inbound, because we're emulating analysis services or now Power BI Premium, right? Mm-hmm. So as far as Tableau and Excel are concerned, back to our picture here, they're talking to us through DAX and MDX to our XMLA protocol. They have no clue that we're actually creating a query plan and then translating that into SQL and running it against BigQuery in this picture.
I gotcha.
See what I'm saying?
Great question, Donald. That makes good sense. And because you control the semantic layer, you control, like, nobody's going to be doing something that is out of scope of your semantic layer. Right?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay.
Well, let's go one step. Let's go one step further. Let's do let's go and let's add the model. So we have some nested data here in BigQuery. BigQuery loves nested data. They do a really nice job at that. We recognize this field called product info. It's encoded, and I'm going to go ahead and decode it into color and style because those are two of the attributes. I'll go ahead and put color and style in here. So now I have them in my preview. There's color and style. And then all I need to do, of course, is come back to my project. I got to publish it so that those new metrics are available. And then I'll come back to Power BI here. And I'll do what do I do? A refresh. You know this.
Home. Refresh is
home.
Under queries. It's third group.
Right here.
There you go. Yep.
There we go. And there it is. There's color and style right there. See, there's style and there's color. So let's go and look at it by color, and and I'll update the visualization by color. It's a terrible visualization, but I'm not a report builder. So that's the whole beauty of it. It's like I can let the report builders, build the reports. And me as a data steward can make that data available. And you can see now if I just refresh it here, there it is. There's that new query. And there's what we're doing with the query we're writing to AtScale. There's that extract, which is decoding and unnesting that nested data. And that all happened, without the customer or the end user ever having to know. As far as they're concerned, they have color and style as new dimensions that they can now query on.
This is fantastic. And so I love this. My question for you is, what size company should be looking at this type of solution? Because if you're a mom and pop shop, you don't need a semantic layer. I know large organizations need a semantic layer. What's your current sweet spot, and do you have any future plans for something beyond that scope?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, what I always say is that it's that the semantic layer to be worth the squeeze, because you do
Hmm.
have to create the model, right?
Yep.
To be worth the squeeze, you should have more than one consumer.
Hmm.
So and always include Excel in that. So a lot of
Yep.
people forget to include Excel in that. So it always has to be a plus one. And I would say that if you got more than 20 million rows,
Hmm.
so you need to have decent sized data. Where imports and extracts are going to start to be a challenge in terms of keeping them refreshed and the like, and creating those silos. Then if you have, like I would say, more than 100 million rows certainly would make sense to have a semantic layer like AtScales, and having a consumption environment where you have more than one BI tool, and Excel counts. Is
Okay.
that would be the sweet spot. Otherwise, you know what? If you're just a Power BI shop, a Power BI premium shop, and that's the only way people consume that through Excel, then and your data is small enough, that could be fine, Chris.
Okay.
A fine solution.
Right. And
Yeah.
you know, you don't always want to use a hammer for every solution, right? And I really appreciate that, but I'm trying to understand, like, what's the ideal reason? Why should I put the hammer down? Why should I pick up the screwdriver in this situation? And it sounds like it's multiple BI tools, it's multiple consumption points, it's large amounts of data and streaming data. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, if recency of data, like in other words, freshness of data
Mm-hmm.
is a priority, well then creating those extracts is going to be probably an issue, right? So this is all live.
Okay.
It's on full fidelity, right? So I can drill through on this data and get to the raw details. So we don't pre-aggregate, as you could see.
Mm-hmm.
So all the data that you expose through this model is available at whatever granularity you want to expose it into your users in the model. So
Okay.
it's all defined here. And so I would say, yeah, if your data needs to be fresh, then that's another sort of good reason for having a solution like this.
Well, and it might make a lot of sense for companies that are using, if you're using Power BI on your front end, but your back end is AWS or Google BigQuery. I know a lot of people have had challenges when it comes to building out models, building out reports that work performantly across those different ecosystems. Maybe that would be another place where this might make a good deal of sense as well. So, um,
Yeah, Chris, I'm an organized guy. I'm a little OCD, and you know
yeah.
what? I want Wagner's web store to look the same in Power BI than it does in Tableau, that it does in Excel. So to me, it's like, it is that single source of truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you want a single source of truth, and it's not just at the tool level. I can also connect to the model straight to with a tool like this. So actually, let's just do it. I'm just gonna what the heck, for grins and giggles. This is an extra bonus demo, Chris. So here's what I'm connected with DB Visualizer. This is my favorite little tool to use and write manual SQL queries. There's Wagner's web store right there.
Wow.
Let's go ahead and let me just pull a query because I'm too lazy. Let's go back and pull one of those queries that we got over here. So let's pull one of these queries. Let's run it. I'll paste it here. Now I'm running it through my BI tool, through my JDBC connector. There it is. So I mean, I can build applications around this as well, and everybody's going to get the same answer. Everybody's going to get the same governance,
Mm.
and play by the same rules. And that's just an example of it. It's also happens the same way in a Jupyter notebook. So it doesn't have to be just in a BI tool where a universal semantic layer pays dividends.
Well, that's an excellent point. So if you want to put some analytics inside an app that you
Mm-hmm.
need scale on, this would help with those analytics. Oh, that makes great sense. All right, I think I have a very good understanding of what the Apple Car happiness, uh, why they were saying that, and all the cross, why they were painting such an odd picture for me, because you're talking about this universal semantic layer that's easily accessible across Apple's cars and the color or the feeling of happiness. So that's fantastic. Now I get it.
I'm glad we could resolve that, Chris.
Yes. Thank you. What do you have coming next? What do people who are watching this like? Yeah, Dave, I know this. I've seen this demo before. What do you have coming next for us that people might not have heard about before, or what's new in AtScale that people should investigate?
Ooh, well, I'll give you a little bit of a scoop here. So, you saw us as a data steward. You saw me building those models or defining those models using a GUI, Chris.
Yeah.
AtScale markup language, or AML, is on the way. What that means is that a data engineer can create those semantic models without a GUI, and with just code. And that means that they can bake, and those semantic models can actually be generated in their data pipeline. So they can go from physical data pipeline to database to semantic layer, all within their CI/CD pipeline. I just think it's going to be fantastic because we'll open up the semantic modeling experience to not just BI engineers who like to use a GUI, but also to data and analytics engineers who want to do it with code. And I think we're going to see all kinds of fun stuff there.
Oh, now you're talking my language. I absolutely love that, David. That is fantastic. We have 3 minutes left. We have 2 questions in the queue. Let's see if we can get through these before we have to end it. Donald is asking a follow-up question. How complicated of DAX can you translate back into SQL, right? So sums, no problem. How about prior year, year over year, some more of those more complex DAX functions?
Look, it's full fidelity. So all of those cell-based functions are translated to SQL, and we have to do that in order to be compatible with the tools. So whether it's MDX or DAX, we've done a really good job at implementing. I'm not going to say, Chris, 100% of the spec of MDX and DAX, okay, but a good 90% or more, and including all those core functions that Donald just mentioned.
Awesome. And then Greg has 2 questions. First, how are FinOps or the financial space, how are they taking to AtScale? Is that actually going well, or are you seeing that, or is this more manufacturing? How's the finance space working here?
So we have big customers like, in finance, like Wells Fargo, Chase, Fidelity, Visa. So big customers like that in the finance space. But in terms of the time of FinOps, where the discipline of sort of managing your cloud spend, we see customers. That's one of the reasons, Chris, why customers will buy AtScale, is that because we are tuning those queries on the fly, we're able to reduce their spend by orders of magnitude. AtScale will pay for itself in the first year in most cases, from just the cloud spend that are saved from having to do repetitive queries against granular data over and over again. Because of those aggregates, we can not just improve query performance by orders of magnitude, we can reduce cloud spend costs by orders of magnitude.
Well, right there, I think you're talking, especially at the time of constrained budgets, that's the type of project that continues to move forward and gets adopted, is when you could say, hey, even by implementing this, we're going to end up saving you money at the end of the year. And from there on, that's the type of thing companies are actively looking for. So that's a huge selling point. That's fantastic. Well, Greg has one more question, but we are at time. David, parting words? What would you like the audience to know before we go? What's next steps to engage with you?
If you go to AtScale.com, we have a lot of videos and a lot of content that you can learn about AtScale. You can also contact us through there. So I would encourage you to do that. And look, our goal and my goal in starting the company was basically anybody can be an analyst. And that means bringing data to where they live and breathe, which includes Excel. So that's really our goal, is to make everybody have the ability to ask questions, not just SQL jockeys or data engineers.
That is absolutely fantastic. David, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to join me and my audience to go through AtScale. I really appreciate it. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you for having me, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah. And Dave said it first, thank you guys all for tuning in. Both of us really appreciate it. I will be back next week. Dave was unfortunately probably has something else to do, I guess. But next week, I've got Asif Rahman from Visual SP. He's going to be coming on the show to show you how you can use Visual SP to make your entire analytics experience easier for people to consume, use, and get value out of. So that's going to be another huge one. It would actually tie in quite well with AtScale as well. So thank you guys all for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Peace. Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.